The waiting hall of the Galactic Rehabilitation Center smelled like disinfectant and fear. Captain Lee Ji-woo shifted in his uncomfortable metal chair and watched the crowd of alien buyers around him. They all looked nervous. Some whispered to each other in languages he did not understand. Others checked their protective gear again and again. Ji-woo did not have protective gear. He only had his worn cargo captain uniform and a credit chip with barely enough money to fix his ship. His friend Park Hyeon had told him about this place. Easy credits for difficult passengers, Hyeon had said. Just transport them somewhere safe and collect payment. Simple work for a simple man. The auction hall was huge and cold. Bright white lights buzzed overhead. Along one wall were dozens of containment cells with energy barriers that glowed blue. Inside each cell was a being that no one else wanted. The dangerous ones, the broken ones, the ones that civilized society had given up on. Station security guards walked up and down the rows. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons that hummed with power. Their faces were hidden behind dark visors, but Ji-woo could feel their tension. Even the guards were afraid. Broker Thek stood at the front podium. The Kephrite auctioneer had 6 arms and gray scaly skin. All 6 of his hands shook as he adjusted his protective shield generator for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. Behind him on a large screen were photos and data files of the beings up for auction today. Ladies and gentlemen and honored beings of all species, Broker Thek announced through his voice amplifier, welcome to today's special placement auction. Please remember that all sales are final. No refunds, no exchanges. Buyers assume all risks and responsibilities. Ji-woo looked around at his competition. There was Dr. Zenth, a tall blue researcher, from the Galactic Consortium. His bioscanner equipment covered half a table. Next to him sat Collector Voss, a wealthy Altarian merchant whose luxury hoverchair was worth more than Ji-woo's entire ship. Near the back, a group of military officers in dark uniforms watched everything with cold, calculating eyes. Our first lot today is designation Z47, Broker Thek continued. Zephyrian female, approximately 18 standard years old, last known survivor of her species, possesses Class 5 biokinetic abilities with reality warping potential. The lights dimmed, and the screen showed a containment cell. Inside was a girl who looked almost human except for her silver hair that seemed to move by itself, and her bright violet eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. She paced back and forth like a caged animal. Even through the energy barrier, Ji-woo could feel something electric in the air around her cell. Warning, Broker Thek read from his datapad. Subject exhibits extreme emotional instability. Her powers are directly linked to her psychological state. 17 escape attempts, 43 injured handlers, complete destruction of 2 research facilities. Approach with extreme caution. Dr. Zenth raised one of his 4 arms. What is the starting bid? 5,000 credits, Broker Thek announced. Several beings in the crowd made disapproving sounds. 5,000 was very low for a being with such powerful abilities. That meant she was more trouble than she was worth. Dr. Zenth stood up with his bioscanner equipment. I will examine the subject first. 2 security guards escorted him to the containment area. The girl in the cell stopped pacing and stared at Dr. Zenth as he approached. Her violet eyes seemed to glow brighter. Dr. Zenth activated his bioscanner and pointed it at the girl through the energy barrier. The machine beeped and showed readings on its small screen. The girl tilted her head like she was listening to something. Then she smiled. It was not a nice smile. The bioscanner exploded. Dr. Zenth stumbled backward as sparks and smoke poured from his expensive equipment. The explosion had been small but precise, just enough to destroy the machine without hurting anyone. Technical difficulties, Broker Thek announced nervously. Next bidder? Collector Voss floated forward in his hover chair. His chair was equipped with multiple scanning devices and a personal force field. Surely my equipment is more sophisticated than consortium garbage, he said with a sneer. The girl watched him approach. She placed one hand against the energy barrier and her eyes began to glow even brighter. The air around her cell started to shimmer like heat waves. Collector Voss activated his scanning array. Multiple beams of light played over the girl as his computers analyzed her bio readings. He nodded with satisfaction at the data flowing across his screens. The girl pressed both hands against the energy barrier now. The shimmer in the air grew, stronger. Then every electronic device on Collector Voss's hover chair started sparking. His personal force field flickered and died. His scanning array caught fire. His hover chair made a terrible grinding noise and dropped to the floor with a loud crash. Collector Voss tumbled out and landed hard on the metal deck. Perhaps we should reduce the starting bid, Broker Thex suggested. Sweat dripped down his scaly face. 3,000 credits? The military officers approached next. There were 5 of them in matching dark uniforms. Their leader, a stern woman with metal implants covering half her face, carried a neural restraint device. Military procurement does not require detailed scans, she announced. We will take possession immediately, but as soon as the military group came within 10 meters of the girl's cell, things went very wrong. Every electronic device they carried started malfunctioning at once. Their communications equipment squealed with feedback. Their weapon power cells overloaded and had to be ejected. Even their uniform badges, which had simple computer chips inside, began smoking. The girl was standing now with both hands pressed against the energy barrier. Her silver hair whipped around her head like she was standing in a strong wind. Her eyes blazed with violet light, and the air around her cell was full of crackling energy. The military officers retreated quickly. Their leader's neural restraint device was now just a lump of melted plastic and metal. 2,000 credits? Broker Thex asked hopefully. His voice was getting higher. 1,000? No one moved. The auction hall was silent except for the buzzing of the overhead lights and the hum of the energy barriers. Even the security guards had backed away from the containment area. Ji-woo stood up. His chair scraped loudly on the metal floor and everyone turned to look at him. He walked slowly toward the containment area. He did not carry any scanning equipment or weapons or protective gear. His hands were empty. The girl watched him approach. Her glowing eyes were wary but curious. As he got closer, the crackling energy in the air began to fade. Her silver hair settled back to normal. Ji-woo stopped in front of her cell. The energy barrier hummed between them, but somehow it felt less threatening now. He could see that she was young and scared despite her power. Her clothes were the plain gray uniform of the rehabilitation center. She had been here for a long time. Hello, Ji-woo said in simple galactic standard. His voice was calm and gentle. I am Ji-woo. The girl blinked in surprise. No one had simply talked to her like a normal person in months. Ji-woo reached into his jacket pocket. Several security guards tensed and reached for their weapons, but Ji-woo only pulled out a nutrition bar from his ship's emergency supplies. He held it up so the girl could see it. Are you hungry? He asked. For the first time since the auction began, the girl's powers completely settled. The electric feeling in the air faded away. Her eyes stopped glowing and returned to a normal violet color. She stared at the simple nutrition bar like it was the most precious thing in the galaxy. She nodded slowly. Ji-woo activated the cell's feeding slot and pushed the nutrition bar through. The girl caught it and held it carefully in both hands. When she looked up at him again, her expression had changed completely. The wild, dangerous look was gone. Now she just looked like a frightened young person who had been alone for too long. 1,000 credits, Ji-woo said to Broker Thex, without taking his eyes off the girl. I will take her. The auction hall exploded with protests and warnings. Dr. Zenth shouted that a human cargo hauler could not possibly handle such a dangerous subject. Collector Voss called Ji-woo an idiot from where he sat on the floor next to his broken hover chair. The military officers demanded to know his qualifications, but Broker Thex was already preparing the purchase documents. His hands moved quickly across his data pad. Sold to Captain Lee Ji-woo for 1,000 credits, he announced with obvious relief. In her cell, the girl unwrapped the nutrition bar and took a small bite. For the first time in longer than she could remember, someone had treated her like a person instead of a dangerous animal. She did not know what would happen next, but for now that was enough. The auction was over. The paperwork took 3 hours. Jiwoo sat in a small office while Broker Thex filled out form after form. Each document had warnings stamped in red letters. Extreme hazard. Deadly force authorized. Handler liability unlimited. The stack of papers grew higher and higher on the desk between them. "Are you certain about this, Captain Lee?" Broker Thex asked for the 10th time. His 6 hands trembled as he prepared another form. "This subject has injured 43 trained handlers. 2 research facilities were completely destroyed. The insurance cost alone will bankrupt a small shipping company." Jiwoo signed his name again and pushed the paper back across the desk. "I am certain." Through the office window, he could see his ship in the docking bay. The cargo vessel. Steadfast. Looked old and worn, but it was home. His crew was busy installing additional power shielding that the station required for transporting dangerous beings. Kim Do-hyun, his engineer, was welding extra metal plates over the electrical systems. The work would cost credits they did not have, but station regulations were strict. Dr. Yoon Mina knocked on the office door and entered without waiting for permission. She was the head doctor at the rehabilitation center. Her white coat was stained with coffee and her gray hair was messy from a long day. She carried a thick medical file under one arm. "Captain Lee, I need to speak with you before you make a terrible mistake," she said. Her voice was tired but urgent. "This is not just another difficult passenger. This girl is dying inside and she might take you with her." Broker Thex quickly gathered his papers and left the office. He did not want to be part of this conversation. Dr. Yoon sat down in his chair and opened the medical file. Inside were hundreds of pages of reports, test results, and incident records. "Her name is Kira," Dr. Yoon began. "She is the last known Zephyrian in the galaxy. Her people were wiped out in the Korthax War 18 months ago. She was found drifting in space inside a damaged escape pod. Just a child then, alone and traumatized beyond anything we have seen." Jiwoo looked at the photos in the file. They showed Kira when she first arrived at the center. She was smaller then and even more frightened. Her silver hair was dirty and matted. Her violet eyes held a pain that was hard to look at. "Zephyrians are empathic beings," Dr. Yoon continued. "Their biokinetic powers are connected to their emotions. When they feel safe and loved, their abilities help and heal. When they feel threatened or abandoned, their powers become weapons of mass destruction." The doctor turned more pages. Each report told the same story. Another handler injured, another escape attempt, another facility damaged. The pattern never changed. "We have tried everything," Dr. Yoon said sadly. "Therapy, medication, isolation, group sessions. Nothing works because she has no anchor, no family, no home, no reason to control her powers. She expects everyone to abandon her because everyone always does. It has become a cycle that feeds itself." Jiwoo studied a recent photo of Kira. She looked older now and harder. Her eyes held anger instead of just pain, but he could still see the frightened child underneath. "You remind me of my sister," Jiwoo said quietly. "Her name was Linari. She died in the border wars with the Korthax. Same war that killed Kira's people." Dr. Yoon closed the file. "I am sorry for your loss, but you cannot save your sister by trying to save this girl. Kira is not your family, Captain. She is a traumatized weapon that could destroy everything you care about." "Maybe," Jiwoo said, "but someone has to try." The doctor sighed and stood up. "The transfer will happen in 1 hour. She will be in power-dampening restraints and accompanied by a full medical team. Do not remove those restraints until you are far from populated space. And Captain?" She paused at the door. "If you change your mind, no one will blame you. Most people would not even try." After Dr. Yoon left, Jiwoo walked to his ship. The Steadfast was not much to look at, but it was reliable. The crew was small, but loyal. They had been through dangerous times together and always made it home. Kim Do-hyun was finishing the electrical shielding installation. He was covered in grease and sparks, but the work was almost done. The young engineer looked worried as Jiwoo approached. "Captain, are you sure about this?" Do-hyun asked. The power readings from that girl are off the charts. If she has an episode, during hyperspace transit we could be stranded between stars. The shielding will hold, Jiwoo said with more confidence than he felt. Navigator Song Yuna climbed down from the bridge where she had been installing backup navigation systems. Her usually neat uniform was wrinkled and stained with lubricant. I have triple redundancy on all critical systems now, she reported. But if she can affect electronics through energy barriers, I do not know if it will be enough. Chief Medic Han Sora joined them in the cargo bay. She had been preparing a medical isolation unit for their passenger. The sedatives they use at the center will not work for long, she warned. Zephyrian biology processes most drugs too quickly. If she wakes up angry or afraid during transport, she will not, Jiwoo said firmly. She is not cargo, she is crew. The 3 crew members stared at him in shock. Engineer Choi Min-jae, who had been listening from the engine room, poked his head out. Captain, with respect, she is a dangerous alien with reality-warping powers, Min-jae said. How is she crew? Jiwoo thought about his sister Nari. She had been difficult too. Always getting into fights, always running away from home when things got hard. But she was family, so they never gave up on her. Even when the authorities wanted to send her to military school, their parents stood by her. Family meant never abandoning someone, no matter how difficult they were. Because that is what family does, Jiwoo said simply. The transfer team arrived exactly 1 hour later. 6 security guards in full armor escorted a medical hover gurney. Kira lay strapped down with power-dampening restraints on her arms and legs. Metal bands around her head blocked her psychic abilities. She was awake but barely conscious from the drugs they had given her. Dr. Yoon supervised the transfer personally. Remember, Captain, do not remove those restraints until you are in deep space. The dampening field has a range of 50 meters. If she gets free near the station, the damage could be catastrophic. The guards loaded Kira's gurney into the Steadfast's medical bay. She did not move or speak during the transfer. Her violet eyes stared at nothing. The drugs made her seem empty and lost. As soon as the loading ramp closed, Jiwoo made his decision. He walked to the medical bay where Kira lay motionless on the gurney. His crew gathered behind him, all of them tense and ready for trouble. Captain, what are you doing? Dr. Sora asked as Jiwoo reached for the restraint controls. She is not cargo, Jiwoo repeated. He pressed the release button and the power-dampening restraints opened with soft clicks. She is crew. The metal bands fell away from Kira's arms and legs. The psychic dampening field shut down. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Kira's eyes focused and she sat up slowly on the gurney. Her silver hair began to glow with faint energy. The lights in the medical bay flickered. The crew stepped back nervously. Engineer Min-jae reached for the emergency alarm. But Jiwoo moved closer to the gurney instead of away. Hello, Kira, he said in the same gentle voice he had used at the auction. Welcome aboard the Steadfast. Welcome home. Kira stared at him with wide violet eyes. No one had ever called her by her name before. No one had ever said, welcome home. The energy glow around her hair faded back to normal silver. Home, she whispered. Her voice was rough from the drugs but filled with desperate hope. Home, Jiwoo confirmed. Behind him, his crew realized they were no longer just a cargo hauling operation. They had become something much more dangerous and much more important. They had become a family, and their newest family member could accidentally destroy them all if they made her feel unwelcome or afraid. The real journey was just beginning. The first week aboard the Steadfast was chaos. Kira's nightmares woke the entire ship at least twice each night. During her dreams, power surged through the electrical systems like angry lightning. Lights flickered on and off. The temperature controls went crazy, making some rooms freezing cold while others became burning hot. The food processors stopped working completely after the third nightmare. Engineer Choi Min-jae stood in the engine room surrounded by burned circuits and melted wiring. His toolkit was scattered across the floor and his uniform was black with soot. He looked like he had been fighting a small war against the ship itself. Captain, I cannot keep fixing everything she breaks, Min-jae said through gritted teeth. Last night, she somehow made the gravity generator reverse itself. I was floating upside down in my bunk for 20 minutes. This morning, the waste recycling system decided to pump everything backward. Do you know how terrible that smells? Navigator. Song Yuna had given up trying to keep the bridge system stable. Instead, she installed manual backup controls for everything important. Her navigation console looked like it belonged on a ship from 50 years ago, all switches and dials instead of computer screens. The hyperspace motivator shuts down every time she has a bad dream, Yuna reported. We dropped out of hyperspace twice yesterday. At this rate, it will take us 6 months to reach our destination instead of 6 days. Chief Medic Han Sora was the most worried of all. She monitored Kira's vital signs constantly, and what she saw frightened her. Her bio readings are all wrong, Sora explained to Jiwoo as they stood outside the small cabin where Kira slept. Her heart rate spikes to dangerous levels during nightmares. Her brain activity looks like someone having constant seizures. I do not think her body can handle this stress much longer. Through the cabin door, they could hear Kira talking in her sleep. She spoke in the Zephyrian language, words that sounded like music mixed with crying. Sometimes she called out names that must have belonged to her dead family. Sometimes she just screamed. But Jiwoo did not give up. Every morning he brought Kira breakfast on a metal tray. The food was usually cold because the processors were broken. Again, but he never complained. He would sit with her while she ate and tell her simple stories about the places they would visit. When she stared at him with confused violet eyes, he would just smile and say good morning like everything was normal. He gave her small jobs to do around the ship, clean the observation windows, count the supply containers in cargo bay 2, organize the tool cabinet in the main corridor. Simple tasks that kept her hands busy and her mind focused on something other than her nightmares. When Kira inevitably had an emotional episode that damaged ship systems, Jiwoo would calmly show her how to help fix what was broken. He never got angry or blamed her. He just handed her tools and explained how circuits worked or how to replace a burned power coupling. Everyone makes mistakes, he would say, when she apologized with tears in her eyes. The important thing is learning how to make things better. Slowly, very slowly, things began to change. The nightmares came less often. The power surges became smaller and easier to control. Kira started sleeping for longer periods without screaming herself awake. Engineer Minji noticed it first. He was working on the main engine when Kira appeared beside him carrying a toolkit. She did not say anything, but she handed him exactly the right tools at exactly the right moments. When he tested the engine afterwards, it ran smoother than it had in months. She has a natural feeling for energy systems, Minji admitted to Jiwoo later. When she is calm, she can sense problems in the electrical flow before our instruments. Detect them. It is actually helpful. Navigator Yuna made a similar discovery. During a difficult hyperspace calculation, Kira had quietly pointed to a section of star charts spread across the navigation table. When Yuna checked that area more carefully, she found a gravitational anomaly that would have pulled them off course. Kira had somehow sensed the space distortion through her biokinetic abilities. She can feel things in hyperspace that our sensors cannot detect, Yuna reported with amazement. If we could teach her to control this ability, she could be the best navigator in the galaxy. Chief Medic Sora found that Kira's presence actually helped during medical emergencies. When crew member got hurt or sick, Kira's empathic abilities allowed her to sense exactly where the pain was located. Her powers could also speed healing by encouraging damaged cells to repair themselves faster. She is not just dangerous, Sora realized. She could be a powerful healer if someone taught her properly. The real breakthrough came during their 4th week in space. They were traveling through a dangerous area near the outer rim when 3 pirate ships appeared on their sensors. The pirates broadcast a surrender demand over all communication channels. Cargo ship Steadfast, shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded. We know you are carrying valuable cargo. Do not resist and no one will be hurt. The Steadfast was not a warship. They had only basic defensive shields and no weapons worth mentioning. Against 3 pirate vessels, they had no chance in a fight. Evasive maneuvers, Jiwoo ordered as the pirate ships moved to surround them. Full power to shields. The pirates began firing energy weapons at the Steadfast, blue and red. Laser beams lit up the space around them. The ship shook as enemy fire hit their shields. Warning alarms sounded throughout the vessel. Kira was in the cargo bay when the attack began. The sound of weapons fire and the feeling of the ship being hurt triggered something deep inside her. Her violet eyes began to glow with bright energy. Her silver hair lifted and moved like it was underwater. The air around her started to shimmer with power, but instead of the wild, chaotic energy that usually came with her emotions, something different happened. Kira's protective instincts took control of her abilities. She wanted to keep her new family safe. She wanted to protect the people who had been kind to her. Energy flowed out of Kira like silver water. It spread through the ship's hull and surrounded the Steadfast with a perfect energy shield. The pirate weapons fire hit the shield and simply disappeared, absorbed harmlessly into Kira's biokinetic field. At the same time, her powers reached out toward the attacking ships. But instead of destroying them, she carefully overloaded only their weapon systems. Sparks and smoke poured from the pirate gun ports as their energy cannons burned out one by one. Within minutes, the 3 pirate ships were helpless. Their weapons were dead, and their engines were starting to malfunction as Kira's energy field spread to affect their power systems too. The pirates broadcast frantic retreat signals and limped away into deep space as fast as their damaged ships could carry them. On the bridge of the Steadfast, the crew stared at their sensor readings in amazement. They had not fired a single shot, but the battle was over. 3 dangerous pirate ships had been defeated without anyone being killed or seriously injured. Kira appeared in the doorway of the bridge. Her eyes were still glowing faintly, but her expression was calm and controlled. For the first time since coming aboard, her powers felt peaceful instead of dangerous. "Are we safe now?" she asked quietly. Jiwoo stood up from the captain's chair and walked over to her. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and smiled with pride and affection. "We are safe," he said. "Thanks to you, you protected us." Kira stared down at her hands in wonder. The energy glow was fading back to normal, but she could still feel her powers humming beneath her skin. For the first time in her life, she had used her abilities to help instead of hurt. She had been a protector instead of a weapon. "You are not dangerous," Jiwoo told her softly. "You are family, and family protects each other." Later that night, Kira slept without nightmares for the first time since her people died. The ship's systems ran perfectly. The lights stayed steady and warm. The engine hummed with smooth power. In the morning, Engineer Minjae found that several chronic problems with the ship had somehow fixed themselves overnight. Navigator Yuna discovered that their hyperspace motivator was running better than ever. Chief Medic Sora reported that Kira's vital signs had finally stabilized to normal levels. The wild alien girl was becoming something new. She was becoming crew. She was becoming family. And the crew of the Steadfast was learning that sometimes the most dangerous things in the galaxy could also be the most precious, if you just had the courage to show them kindness instead of fear. Word traveled fast through the galaxy's underground networks. Within days of the pirate encounter, every smuggler, bounty hunter, and information broker knew about the cargo ship with the mysterious energy shield. Stories spread through space, ports, and trading stations. Some said the Steadfast had alien technology worth millions of credits. Others claimed they had found an ancient weapon from a lost civilization. The truth was more valuable than any of the rumors. A Zephyrian with controlled biokinetic powers was beyond price to the right buyers. Captain Jiwoo noticed the changes during their next supply stop at Kepler Station. Too many people watched them dock. Too many conversations stopped when he walked past. The station master, a nervous Twi'lek named Bei Tai-hoon, kept glancing toward their ship while processing their cargo permits. "You might want to finish your business here quickly," Tai-hoon warned quietly. "There have been inquiries about your vessel, official inquiries from people with expensive ships and government clearance codes." Back on the Steadfast, life had settled into a peaceful routine. Kira helped with daily maintenance tasks, and her presence made everything run smoother. She had learned to control her nightmares, and her powers no longer caused random system failures. The crew had stopped treating her like a dangerous passenger and started treating her like the valuable team member she had become. Engineer Minjae actually looked forward to working with her now. "Hand me the plasma coupler," he would say, and Kira would select exactly the right tool from dozens of similar ones. Her ability to sense energy patterns made her better at diagnosing problems than most trained technicians. Navigator Yuna relied on Kira's spatial awareness during difficult jumps through asteroid fields or around gravitational anomalies. "Something feels wrong about this area," Kira would say, and Yuna would find hidden dangers that normal sensors missed. Chief Medic Sora discovered that Kira could speed healing and reduce pain just by being near injured crew members. Her empathic abilities made her a natural medical assistant who always knew exactly how patients were feeling. But their peaceful time was ending. 3 days after leaving Kepler Station, they were followed by a sleek consortium research vessel. The ship stayed just at the edge of sensor range, but it never lost them through multiple hyperspace jumps. Then came the official communication from Admiral Chang Sung-yun of the Human Defense Force. His message was brief and direct. "Captain Lee Ji-woo of the cargo vessel Steadfast. You are ordered to report to Titan Base for immediate debriefing regarding your recent acquisition of xenobiological assets. Failure to comply will result in seizure of your vessel and criminal charges. A substantial reward awaits your cooperation." Ji-woo deleted the message without responding. He had no intention of turning Kira over to military researchers who would treat her like a laboratory specimen. The breaking point came during a routine cargo pickup on the desert planet Kepler 442b. Ji-woo was meeting with Station Master Bae Tae-hoon to negotiate shipping rates when Kira overheard a conversation that changed everything. She was exploring the station's observation deck when she heard familiar voices through a ventilation grate. Ji-woo was talking to Tae-hoon in a maintenance corridor below her position. "The consortium has issued a formal retrieval mandate," Tae-hoon was explaining. "They claim the Zephyrian girl is too dangerous for civilian custody. They are calling her an uncontrolled bioweapon that poses a threat to populated systems." "She is not a weapon," Ji-woo replied firmly. "She is a person." "I believe you, Captain. But the law does not agree. Bounty hunters are already en route to this system. They have authorization to use any force necessary to retrieve her. Dead or alive, the mandate says. I am sorry, but you cannot stay here." Kira felt her heart break into pieces. She pressed her face against the cold metal grate and listened to the two men discuss her fate like she was cargo again. Despite everything Ji-woo had done for her, despite becoming part of his crew and family, she was still nothing but trouble for the people she cared about. She thought about the crew of the Steadfast. Engineer Minjae, who had learned to trust her with his precious tools. Navigator Yuna, who relied on her to sense hidden dangers. Chief Medic Sora, who had become like an older sister. And Captain Ji-woo, who had risked everything to give her a chance at a normal life. They would all be in danger because of her. The consortium would keep hunting them forever. The bounty hunters would never stop coming. Her new family would never be safe as long as she was with them. Kira made the hardest decision of her life. She would leave first before anyone could abandon her. She would disappear and let the people she loved have their lives back without the constant threat that followed her everywhere. Using her biokinetic abilities, Kira disabled the ship's tracking systems without triggering any alarms. She left, a simple note on her bunk that said only, "Thank you for showing me what family means." Then she slipped away from the station and vanished into the vast crystal canyons that covered most of Kepler 442b. The planet's surface was beautiful and deadly. Tall formations of blue and purple crystal created a maze of passages that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. The crystals interfered with most scanning equipment, making it the perfect place to hide from hunters. For 3 days, Kira lived, alone in the crystal caves. She found water dripping from mineral formations and ate edible moss that grew in the shadowy places. At night, she used her powers to create small amounts of heat and light to stay warm. During the day, she moved deeper into the canyon system, always staying ahead of the search teams she knew would be looking for her. On the third evening, she found an ancient ruin built into a natural crystal cathedral. The architecture was alien and very old, carved from the living rock by a civilization that had vanished long ago. Kira sat in the center of the ruined temple and let her grief pour out through her biokinetic abilities. Her powers painted the crystal walls with shifting patterns of violet and silver light. The display was beautiful but melancholy, like a song made of pure emotion. She mourned for her dead people, for her lost childhood, and for the brief taste of belonging she had found aboard the Steadfast. That was where Jiwoo found her. He appeared in the temple entrance just as the twin suns were setting behind the crystal peaks. He looked tired and worried but not angry. He carried a pack with food and water, and his expression was gentle rather than frustrated. "I thought you might come here," he said quietly. He sat down on the ancient stone steps across from her. "You like high places where you can see for long distances. It makes you feel safer." Kira did not look at him. Her powers continued painting sad colors across the crystal walls. "You should not have followed me," she whispered. "They will find you here, the bounty hunters and the consortium ships. I heard what Station Master Taehoon said. You will never be safe while I am with you." Jiwoo was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was sad but understanding. "I had a sister once. Her name was Lee Nari. She used to run away when things got difficult too. She thought she was protecting our family by leaving before she could cause more trouble." "What happened to her?" Kira asked despite herself. "I always found her and brought her home," Jiwoo said simply. "Every time, because that is what family does. We do not abandon each other when things get hard. We face the problems together." "I am not your sister," Kira said, finally looking up at him. Her violet eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I am not even human." Jiwoo smiled sadly. "No, you are not my sister. You are something better. You are chosen family. Nari was my family because we shared blood. You are my family because we choose to care about each other." The light patterns on the crystal walls began to change. The sad violets and silvers shifted toward warmer colors as hope touched Kira's heart. "But the consortium will never stop hunting me," she said. "The bounty hunters will keep coming. How can we fight the entire galactic government?" "We do not fight them," Jiwoo replied. "We prove them wrong. We show the galaxy that you are not a weapon or a specimen. We show them that you are a person with rights and choices." He stood up and extended his hand toward her. "Come home, Kira. Let us face this together. As family." Kira stared at his outstretched hand for a long moment. She had spent so long believing that everyone would eventually abandon her that trusting someone felt almost impossible. But Jiwoo had already proven his commitment by following her into the dangerous crystal canyons. He had chosen to risk his own safety to find her. She reached out and took his hand. The moment their skin touched, her biokinetic abilities responded with a warm glow that filled the ancient temple with golden light. "Home," she repeated softly, testing the word again. It still sounded like a miracle. Together they walked back through the crystal maze toward the station where the Steadfast waited. Behind them, the ancient temple continued to glow with residual energy from Kira's powers, as if the old stones had been waiting thousands of years to witness such a moment of connection and hope. The real battle was about to begin, but now they would face it as a complete family. When the Steadfast returned to Kepler Station, 6 consortium ships were waiting in orbit. Their sleek hulls gleamed with military polish, and their weapon arrays tracked the small cargo vessel as it approached the docking port. Admiral Chang, Seunghyun's heavy cruiser Dawn's Edge, dominated the formation like a metal mountain floating in space. Director Park Won-ho boarded the Steadfast before the engines had finished cooling down. He wore an expensive gray uniform with Consortium Science Division insignia and carried a briefcase full of legal documents. Behind him came 12 security guards in full combat armor. Their faces were hidden behind dark visors, but their weapons were clearly visible. "Captain Lee Ji-woo," Director Park announced in a cold, professional voice. "I am here to reclaim consortium property designation Z-47. You will surrender the subject immediately." The confrontation took place in the Steadfast's small conference room. Director Park spread official papers across the metal table while his guards stood at attention along the walls. The ship's crew gathered behind Jiwoo, presenting a united front despite being vastly outnumbered. Kira is not property, Jiwoo said calmly. She is a sentient being with rights under galactic law. Director Park smiled without warmth. The subject's legal status was determined when she was classified as experimental material 18 months ago. As the last known survivor of her species, she represents invaluable genetic and cultural data that belongs to galactic science, not to a backwater cargo hauler. He opened his briefcase and removed a thick legal document. This is an emergency seizure order signed by the Galactic Council Science Committee. The subject poses a clear danger to civilian populations and must be contained in a proper research facility. Engineer Choi Min-jae stepped forward angrily. She has not hurt anyone since coming aboard our ship. She helps with repairs and maintenance. She is part of our crew. Irrelevant, Director Park replied. The subject's abilities are too dangerous for civilian control. Our research shows that Zephyrian biokinetic powers can affect matter at the molecular level. In the wrong emotional state, she could theoretically destabilize the atomic structure of an entire space station. Navigator Song Yuna pointed to the security guards. If she is so dangerous, why are you only bringing 12 soldiers? Surely you would need an army to contain someone who can destroy space stations. Director Park's smile faltered slightly. The subject will be sedated during transport. We have developed new containment procedures specifically designed for her physiology. Chief Medic Han Sora shook her head in disgust. You want to drug her into unconsciousness and lock her in a laboratory? That is not research, that is imprisonment. The needs of galactic civilization outweigh the comfort of one individual, Director Park said firmly. Zephyrian technology could revolutionize energy production, medical treatment, and space travel. The subject's willing cooperation would be preferable, but her consent is not legally required. That was when Captain Renjo of the Terran Alliance cruiser Warrior's Pride requested permission to board the Steadfast. Joe was a decorated veteran with authority to represent human interests in legal disputes. His arrival complicated Director Park's simple seizure operation. I am here as an independent witness, Captain Joe announced as he entered the conference room. His uniform bore the scars of many battles, and his weathered face showed the wisdom of long experience. The Terran Alliance has questions about this seizure order. Director Park's professional composure cracked slightly. This is a consortium matter, Captain Joe. The Alliance has no jurisdiction here. Perhaps, Joe replied. But the subject was purchased legally by a human citizen. Captain Lee has rights under Alliance law that supersede consortium emergency orders. The legal argument that followed was complex and heated. Director Park produced evidence of Kira's dangerous abilities and the potential threat she posed to civilian populations. Captain Joe countered with documentation of her peaceful integration aboard the Steadfast and the precedent of sentient rights in similar cases. Hours passed while the two officials argued over jurisdiction, legal authority, and galactic precedent. Through it all, Kira remained silent in her cabin, surrounded by the crew who had become her family. She could feel the tension and fear throughout the ship, but also the determination of people who refused to abandon her. The breakthrough came when lawyer Shin Mirai arrived on an emergency transport from the core worlds. She was a small woman with fierce eyes and a reputation for winning impossible cases involving sentient rights. Her specialty was representing refugees and displaced persons who had no government to protect them. Your seizure order is legally invalid, lawyer Shin announced as she entered the conference room. Her briefcase contained counter documents that challenged every aspect of the consortium's authority. My client was never legally classified as experimental property. She was a refugee child found in distress, not a research specimen. Director Park stood up angrily. The classification was made by proper authority following established protocols. Without her consent or legal representation, Shin replied sharply. No sentient being can be declared property without due process. The Galactic Council's own Charter of Rights forbids it. What followed was the most important legal battle Kira had never wanted. The case attracted attention from across the galaxy as news networks covered the story of the wild girl of the stars and her human protectors. Legal experts debated the fundamental questions of personhood, freedom, and the rights of extinct species. The crew of the Steadfast testified on Kira's behalf. Engineer Minjae explained how her controlled abilities had improved their ship's safety and efficiency. Navigator Yuna described her spatial awareness and ability to detect hidden dangers. Chief Medic Sora documented her healing abilities and gentle nature. But the most powerful testimony came from Captain Joe himself. He told the court about a recent solar storm that had threatened his ship and crew. The Steadfast had responded to their distress call, and Kira had used her biokinetic abilities to create an energy barrier that protected both vessels from deadly radiation. I watched her save the lives of 347 Alliance personnel, Captain Joe testified. She did not hesitate to risk herself for strangers. That is not the behavior of a dangerous weapon. That is the behavior of a hero. The climax came when Director Park demanded that Kira demonstrate her abilities for the court. He wanted to prove that her powers were too dangerous for civilian control. Consortium guards entered the courtroom with neural inhibitors designed to force compliance. As the guards approached her position, Kira's biokinetic abilities began to respond to her fear and anger. The air around her started to shimmer with energy. Lights flickered throughout the courtroom. Electronic devices began to malfunction. But instead of lashing out at her captors, Kira made a different choice. Her powers reached out and created a protective energy barrier around everyone in the room, including Director Park's own guards. The barrier was gentle but impenetrable, designed to shield rather than harm. I choose, Kira said clearly, speaking to the court for the first time. Her voice was steady and strong despite her fear. I choose my family. I choose the humans who saw a person instead of a weapon. I choose Captain Jiwoo, who gave me a home. I choose freedom. The energy barrier pulsed with warm golden light, bathing the entire courtroom in peaceful radiance. For several minutes no one spoke or moved. The demonstration was more powerful than any legal argument. Here was clear proof that Kira's abilities could be controlled and directed with precision and compassion. Judge Kang Minji, the presiding magistrate, was the first to break the silence. The court recognizes the defendant's right to self-determination. The seizure order is denied pending full judicial review of her legal status. Director Park's face turned red with anger. This is a mistake that will endanger countless lives. The subject cannot be allowed to remain in civilian custody. The subject's name is Kira, Judge Kang replied firmly, and she has demonstrated better control of her abilities than many licensed professionals. This court finds no evidence that she poses a threat to public safety under proper supervision. The legal victory was complete but fragile. Director Park immediately filed appeals with higher courts and demanded emergency reviews from multiple government agencies. The battle for Kira's freedom was far from over, but for the first time since her people died, Kira had hope. She had chosen her own path instead of having it chosen for her. She had stood before the most powerful institutions in the galaxy and declared her independence. Most importantly, she had not stood alone. The crew of the Steadfast had fought beside her every step of the way. They had proven that family was not about species or biology. It was about choice, commitment, and the courage to protect what you love against impossible odds. The wild alien girl had found her place in the universe. She was no longer lost or alone. She belonged somewhere, with people who valued her for who she was rather than what she could do. 6 months after the court victory, the Steadfast looked like a completely different ship. The old cargo hauler had been upgraded with new engines, advanced sensors, and a medical bay that could handle emergency rescue operations. The crew had grown from 5 to 12 members, each one carefully chosen for their skills and their ability to work with Kira. The transformation began when news networks across the galaxy picked up the story of the wild girl of the stars and her human family. Public opinion shifted dramatically in their favor as people learned the truth about Kira's gentle nature and heroic actions. Donations poured in from supporters who wanted to help the crew continue their work. Captain Jiwoo stood on the bridge watching his expanded crew prepare for their next mission. Engineer Choi Min-jae now supervised a team of 3 assistants, all of whom had learned to work with Kira's energy abilities. Navigator Song Yuna had been promoted to Senior Navigation Officer and trained 2 junior navigators in advanced spatial awareness techniques. Chief Medic Han Sora ran a full medical department with emergency surgical capabilities. Her new assistant, Dr. John Nayong, was a xenobiologist who specialized in Zephyrian physiology and culture. Dr. John had spent months helping Kira piece together fragments of her lost heritage through meditation and memory recovery exercises. The biggest change was Kira herself. The frightened girl who had once destroyed equipment with uncontrolled power surges was now the ship's most valuable crew member. She had learned to shape her biokinetic abilities with artistic precision, creating tools of light and energy that made complex repairs possible in minutes instead of hours. Her spatial awareness had developed to the point where she could detect problems across multiple star systems. During their last rescue mission, she had sensed a damaged colony ship 3 light-years away and guided the Steadfast to their location just in time to prevent a reactor explosion. But the most important change was in Kira's eyes. The pain and fear that had dominated her expression for so long were gone. In their place was confidence, purpose, and the quiet joy of someone who knew exactly where they belonged. The transformation of their mission had been gradual but inevitable. Word spread through refugee communities and frontier settlements that the Steadfast would take on jobs that other ships considered too dangerous or unprofitable. They specialized in rescuing people that everyone else had given up on. Their current mission was a perfect example. A distress signal had been received from the Titan mining colony in the Outer Rim. Pirates had attacked the settlement and taken hostages from a refugee convoy. The colonial authorities wanted to negotiate, but the pirates were demanding an impossible ransom. Local security forces were too far away to help in time. "Status report," Jiwoo requested, as the ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Titan system. "Sensors show 5 pirate vessels in orbit around the mining colony," reported Junior Navigator Park Jung-hoon. "Their ships are old but heavily armed. The colony's defenses are minimal. Medical assessment indicates approximately 200 hostages in the colony's main habitat dome," added Dr. Sora. "Biosigns suggest they are frightened but unharmed so far. The pirates are broadcasting demands every 10 minutes, Communications Officer Kim Sun-woo reported. They want 50,000 credits and safe passage to neutral space. The colony cannot possibly pay that amount." Jiwoo turned to Kira, who stood beside him at the central command station. Her silver hair moved gently around her shoulders and her violet eyes were focused on the sensor displays. "What do you sense?" Kira placed her hands on the sensor console and extended her biokinetic awareness toward the distant colony. Her abilities could feel the emotional states of the people involved, distinguishing between the genuine fear of hostages and the artificial bravado of their captors. "The pirates are nervous," she reported after a moment of concentration. "Their leader is trying to project confidence, but underneath he is scared. They did not expect the hostage situation to last this long. Their ships have engine problems and they are running low on supplies." "Can you disable their weapons like you did before?" Engineer Min-jae asked from his station. Kira nodded slowly. "Yes, but the range is very long. I would need to get much closer to affect their systems safely. And there are civilians nearby. I do not want to accidentally hurt the hostages." Jiwoo studied the tactical display for several minutes while his crew waited for orders. The situation was dangerous, but not hopeless. They had dealt with similar problems before and developed strategies that used Kira's abilities without putting innocent people at risk. "Here is what we will do," Jiwoo announced. "We approach the colony openly under a flag of truce. Kira will extend her protective shields around the habitat domes to keep the hostages safe. Once the civilians are protected, she can disable the pirate ships without worrying about collateral damage." "What if the pirates fire on us during the approach?" asked Weapons Officer Lee Sung-min. The Steadfast now carried defensive weapons, but they were no match for 5 pirate vessels in direct combat. "They will not," Kira said with quiet confidence. "I can feel their emotional state. They want to escape more than they want to fight. If we give them a way to leave without losing face, they will take it." The plan worked perfectly. As the Steadfast Approach the mining colony. Kira's biokinetic abilities reached out across space like invisible threads of silver energy. Her protective barrier surrounded the habitat domes, making them immune to weapon fire or other threats. At the same time, her powers carefully infiltrated the pirate ship's electrical systems. She did not destroy anything important, just caused enough minor malfunctions to make the vessels uncomfortable to operate. Life support systems ran too hot. Navigation computers developed annoying glitches. Weapon targeting systems drifted off calibration. Within an hour, the pirate leader was ready to negotiate. The psychological pressure of dealing with an opponent who could affect his ship's systems from long range was too much for his crew to handle. They agreed to release all hostages in exchange for safe passage out of the system. "This is Captain Rex Vander of the mercenary vessel Dark Star," the pirate leader transmitted as his ships prepared to leave. "Tell me, who is your navigator? I have never seen sensor work that precise at this range." Jiwoo smiled as he opened the communication channel. "Her name is Kira. She is the best navigator in the galaxy." "Impossible," Vander replied. "No human has spatial awareness capabilities like that." "You are correct," Jiwoo said calmly. "She is not human. She is family." After the pirates departed, the crew of the Steadfast spent 3 days helping the mining colony recover from the attack. Kira used her healing abilities to treat injured colonists while the medical team set up a temporary clinic. Engineer Minjae and his assistants repaired damaged infrastructure that the pirates had sabotaged during their occupation. The grateful colonists offered payment, but Jiwoo declined most of it. They only accepted enough credits to cover fuel and supplies for their next mission. The real reward was seeing families reunited and a community restored to safety. As they prepared to leave Titan Colony, Communications Officer Kim Sunwoo received an urgent transmission from the Outer Rim territories. A passenger liner had suffered catastrophic engine failure near an unstable star system. 2,000 civilians were trapped aboard a ship that was slowly being pulled toward a red giant star. "Local rescue services cannot reach them in time," Sunwoo reported. "The gravitational fields around that star system will tear apart any normal ship that gets too close. They are asking for volunteers with specialized capabilities." Jiwoo looked at his crew. Every face showed the same determination. They had found their purpose in the galaxy, and that purpose was helping people who had nowhere else to turn. "Set course for the distress coordinates," he ordered. "Maximum speed." As the Steadfast jumped to hyperspace, Kira stood in the observation lounge watching the stars blur past the reinforced windows. Dr. John Nayung joined her, carrying 2 cups of the Zephyrian tea they had learned to brew from synthetic compounds. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if Captain Jiwoo had not bid on you at that auction?" Dr. Jian asked as they sipped the bitter but comforting drink. Kira considered the question seriously. 6 months ago, she might have said she would be dead by now, either killed by her own uncontrolled powers or destroyed by researchers who saw her as nothing more than a specimen to study. "I think I would still be lost," she said finally. "Not just physically lost, but lost inside myself. I had forgotten how to trust anyone or believe that tomorrow could be better than today." Through the observation window, the stars continued their ancient dance across the darkness of space. But to Kira, they no longer looked cold and empty. Now she could feel the life and warmth that existed throughout the galaxy. Billions of beings, living and working and hoping for better futures. "The humans taught me something important," Kira continued. "They showed me that family is not something you are born into. It is something you choose and build and protect. Captain Jiwoo could have bought any passenger at that auction, but he chose me, not because I was useful or valuable, but because he saw someone who needed help." Dr. Jian nodded thoughtfully. "And now you help others in the same way." "We help others," Kira corrected gently. "All of us together. That is what makes us strong." An hour later, they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the unstable star system. The view through the observation windows was both beautiful and terrifying. The red giant star dominated the local space, its surface churning with massive solar flares that sent waves of deadly radiation in all directions. Near the star's outer corona, barely visible against the brilliant light, was the crippled passenger liner. Its emergency distress beacon pulsed weakly as the ship was slowly drawn toward destruction by gravitational forces beyond its ability to resist. Sensor readings confirmed 2,043 life signs aboard the passenger vessel, reported Navigator Park Jung-hoon. Their engine core is completely dead. Life support is running on emergency power that will fail in approximately 4 hours. The gravitational shear near that star will destroy our hull if we get too close, warned Chief Engineer Min Jae. Even our upgraded shields cannot handle that level of stress. Ji-woo turned to Kira. Can you extend your protective barriers far enough to shield both ships during a rescue operation? Kira closed her eyes and reached out with her biokinetic senses. She could feel the immense energy swirling around the red giant star. The gravitational forces were like invisible rivers of power flowing through space. The radiation levels would kill unprotected beings in seconds. But she could also feel something else. The desperate hope of 2,000 people who were facing death and refusing to give up, children clinging to their parents, elderly passengers comforting younger travelers, crew members working frantically to extend life support for a few more hours. Yes, she said with absolute certainty. I can protect them. All of them. What followed was the most challenging rescue operation in the Steadfast's history. Kira's biokinetic abilities had to maintain protective barriers around both ships while they maneuvered through gravitational fields that could tear apart planets. Her powers became a bridge of silver energy connecting the two vessels as they slowly moved away from the hungry star. The rescue took 6 hours. 6 hours of constant concentration as Kira held the barriers steady, while emergency shuttles transferred passengers from the dying liner to the safety of the Steadfast and 3 other ships that had arrived to help with the evacuation. When it was over, Kira collapsed from exhaustion, but every passenger had been saved. 2,043 people who would go home to their families, because a wild alien girl had learned to control her powers and use them to protect instead of destroy. As the rescue fleet jumped to hyperspace carrying their precious cargo of survivors, Captain Ji-woo sat beside Kira's bed in the medical bay. She was sleeping peacefully for the first time in days, her silver hair spread across the pillow like captured starlight. She has changed all of us, Dr. Sora observed as she checked Kira's vital signs. 6 months ago, we were just a cargo hauling crew trying to make enough credits to keep our ship running. Now we are something much more important. Ji-woo nodded, thoughtfully. We are a family, and families take care of each other and help others when they can. Through the medical bay windows, the stars continued their eternal journey across the galaxy. Somewhere among those distant suns were more people who needed help, more refugees and outcasts and forgotten souls who had been abandoned by a civilized society that preferred to ignore difficult problems. The Steadfast would find them, the crew would help them, and at the center of it all would be Kira, the last Zephyrian, who had learned that the most powerful force in the universe was not biokinetic energy or advanced technology. It was love. Simple, stubborn, unshakable love that refused to abandon people no matter how difficult or dangerous they might be. The wild alien girl had scared off all bidders at that auction so long ago. Everyone except one human captain who reached out with an open hand and stayed committed when things got difficult. That commitment had saved them both. And now they would spend the rest of their lives proving that sometimes the most broken things in the galaxy could be repaired with nothing more than patience, kindness, and the courage to never give up on someone who needed help. The stars watched and approved as the Steadfast continued its journey toward new adventures and new chances to show the galaxy what family really meant.